City Marketing and Strategic Partnerships Officer for Georges River Council. I'll be your facilitator for today's webinar on the new normal for business 2020 and beyond with Trevor Weeding. This is the final in our series of free webinars created in partnership between Georges River Council and the St George Business Chamber with the support of New South Wales Treasury. This series has been focused on the theme of resilience. This theme aims to help businesses navigate their way back to success after such a turbulent and disruptive year. So, onto today's webinar, we're focusing on the customer or client. Customer service, well, it sounds very cool and easy, but it's often the area where both potential new business and existing customers are lost. Many businesses are struggling to cope during the pandemic, and those that have grown and prospered have some common traits. Well, there's speed and agility, and they've been vital to their success, or in many cases, the survival of small businesses. So, for topics in today's workshop, well, what has changed in the way customers buy from you in recent months, customer ranking pre and post-COVID, and 3 tips to grow your business from tomorrow. This workshop is broken up into 2 sessions. The first session is looking at B2B or business-to-business relationships and includes a brief session for questions and answers. We'll then pause for a brief 2-minute break and then reconvene for round 2, where we delve into the B2C, business-to-customer relationships. So today's webinar is being recorded, and a link to this recording will be made available within a week. Now, I need to talk to you about Trevor Weeding. He's our presenter for today. Trevor owns Development Pathways and works with local businesses to identify shortcomings at all levels of customer service. He can assist you when you are ready to take on your first employee, expand your workforce, and ensure that you're compliant with the Fair Work Act. Trevor has worked with hundreds of small business owners and helped many navigate their way to business success. With over 30 years sales experience in the media industry, advertising, sales and management, including 7 years with St George and Sutherland Shire Leader. Trevor has first-hand experience on marrying client expectations and client satisfaction. So before I hand over to Trevor, some quick housekeeping rules, guys. Please have your microphone on mute unless you're ready to ask a question. You can ask a question either via the chat box or by speaking. So I don't want to hold you up any further. So Trevor, I'm giving it over to you. Show them and work your magic.
Thank you, Tanya. Waving magic wands around. So thanks everyone for participating today. I will bring up my slideshow now. And away we go. So I can't stop myself from asking this. I'm assuming everyone can see that screen, so yell at if you cannot. So here we go. So the new normal, as we heard, what has changed for small businesses? And I should say too, we had a futurist start off Small Business Month who took quite macro view of the world in general during COVID, but also looking at how those COVID restrictions and so on came right then, even as far down as our local government area here. This takes a somewhat more micro view, talking about small businesses in general, and I suppose you could say in Australia, but particularly here in New South Wales. So as Tanya said, we're looking at business to business first and business to consumer. I'm not an economist, okay? There are going to be some comments about the economy. I'm not Craig James from Consec. I'm not an economist, but they are common sense things that I think most of you observe or know about as we work through. I want to start though with a bit of a statement, folks, and I think this is really important for small businesses, for confidence, for mental health and all these sorts of things. The problem we face at the moment is we are in a recession here in Australia, and it's not your usual sort of recession. Recessions normally come off a high. Housing booms, for example, dot-com booms, all those sorts of things. And you look at people who get hurt in a recession and lose lots of money on the stock market and property values and so on. You think, where are you idiots? You got greedy and you were speculating and so on. This is not one of those. Okay, this is not part of a cycle. It is an unplanned, unforeseen global health pandemic, okay? And no one could have possibly seen this coming at all. So no one should feel bad about getting caught in it. And I've been quite annoyed, frankly, and I've seen the impact on particularly mental health of some business owners where the media is reporting that, oh, these businesses are doing really, really well, and the implication is that those businesses must be absolutely brilliant because they can pivot and they can work through all of this. No, that's not right. They are great, they've pivoted and they've done really well, but it doesn't make the businesses who were affected and have had to close even, doesn't make them bad business people. And no one should think that they were. I've got a friend, at one anecdote only, a friend in Melbourne who a year ago set up his own hairdressing business from home. Literally shut down for the best part of 6 months now. I think there was a small break around July where I was able to reopen and have some customers, and then just closed up completely. Absolutely no fault whatsoever, could not possibly have seen that coming. So it's a fact that many well-managed, profitable businesses have been devastated by border closures, lockdowns, customer access, all those sorts of things. Absolutely no fault of their own. This is not part of a cycle. And I think we all need to remember as well, Australia's economy was not chuffing along all that brilliantly during 2019. We've had stagnant wages growth for a couple of years. We had those devastating bushfires, particularly in the eastern states, New South Wales, Victoria in particular, late last year. And remember, they started around about this time last year. In fact, I think we had bushfires even in August, September last year. So the economy wasn't exactly chuffing along at a million miles an hour when COVID hit, and COVID, of course, has caused the recession. There've been some big changes, and I've broken this up between business to business and business to consumer. So what's changed? Online sales clearly have just gone kaboom through the roof. And it's everything from businesses now having transactional websites that they might not have needed to have or didn't think they needed to have before, through to, if you hang around any shopping centre at the moment, any strip shopping centre, I can point in our local area to places like Bexley, down around Ullewa, Carlton and so on. And there's guys, Deliveroo or whatever, Uber Eats, whatever they are, go up to outside any McDonald's, they're just hanging around with their phones waiting for a call to come in and collect someone's meal for them. So online sales have just gone through the roof. Travel, and when I talk about travel, I'm not talking about getting on a train and going to the city. I'm talking about particularly interstate travel, but also overseas travel for business, which affects the B2B market more. That's just plummeted, of course. It's just basically a complete halt. Zoom and the like of Zoom has gone through the roof. Wouldn't you love to have shares in Zoom? Cashless payments have again increased. Again, businesses who have had to change their websites to a transactional one have had to have an ability for people to pay when they place their orders, but also too many businesses dealing with customers directly, shops, cafes and so on. I don't think it's uncommon to find that they've still got signs up saying either we don't accept cash or cash is preferred, please. And it's everything. I was in a Vinnie's the other day and they've got a sign saying we prefer cash, thank you. Shop local, both for business to business and also for business to consumer. The St George Business Chamber launched their Buy Local campaign, our Buy Local campaign, about this time last year, around about September, October last year, and it was going very successfully. And then suddenly everybody's got a shop local campaign. COSBOA's got one, small business councils, state governments, all, by the way, it's fantastic, all saying get out, support your local businesses and shop locally. So that's been a really big change in people's attitudes. I've noticed a lot of people in my contact sphere, family, friends, business contacts, who are making a conscious effort to buy something from a local shop rather than going to I'll name some stores, buying from a local hardware store or a local nursery instead of going to Bunnings because it was more convenient to get it all there, just as examples. Ads in print media, I've included that part because of my history, but also when the ads dropped away in print media, the revenue drops away. So that's why a lot of, we're lucky here in our region of Sydney, the St George and Sutherland Shire leader stopped printing for a while, but is now back in print. But there are a lot of suburbs in Sydney and a lot of regional areas that have completely lost their local community newspapers because of all of this. And you see it now, you pick up the average daily newspaper and the size of the paper's down because the ad revenue's gone. And that money didn't necessarily shift elsewhere. A lot of it has shifted online, but the cost of online advertising is a lot less than print advertising. So money basically is just dried up in the advertising industry. Events, again, B2B, but events have clearly moved online. We're doing one now. online that would have been, I can assure you, this would have been done face-to-face, probably at Club Central in Hurstville, but is now moved online. And the event industry itself is just, again, basically not existent at the moment. And again, business to business, Tony Badua spoke about this topic last week in our workshop about reduced cash flow and increased payment cycles. And that's having a lot of impact on some businesses. They're having to go out and negotiate with their suppliers, for example, but also you're finding that it's people at the tail end of that reduced cash flow. People who own investment properties, commercial properties, for example, are having their tenants having to negotiate with them because they can't pay the rents and what they can do, that sort of stuff. So it's been some changes, and there's a lot more than that, but they are the ones that I think affect the majority of businesses in general. Why is that not going? There we go. So we've had some winners and some losers. Winners, fresh food delivery. As I said earlier, there's guys on bikes everywhere at the moment. Everything to do with the internet. If you have anybody in your contact sphere or your networking sphere who does anything to do with the internet, who is a internet security person, who sells computers, hardware providers, all these things, people are running out of those sort of stuff. There was a backlog of orders for just a basic laptop only a couple of months ago. Safety renewables, anybody producing masks, hand sanitizers, and hasn't it been great that some businesses have been able to pivot? I hate that word, but you have to use it. Been able to pivot their businesses. I'm thinking about breweries, for example, that now homebrew microbreweries that now make hand sanitizers. The OH&S industry has done very well out of this, and again, for very sensible reasons. People have needed training. There's a lot of online training that the governments provide to get certified in the basics of COVID safety. But if you're in an industry where you're food handling, for example, you really do need to have experts come in and give you that sort of training. The security industry, the problems that we saw in Melbourne with the security guards in the hotel quarantine was because, we can say this I think without getting worried about slander or libel, is the fact that those guards simply were not trained in how to deal with that. They didn't have proper PPE, they weren't trained in the proper aspect of that. So the OH&S industry has done well. Online training and education, while as you can see on the opposite side there, tertiary education itself has been a big loser, the universities in particular and the private colleges, because their students are gone. Online training has certainly stepped up as well. And I can put my hand up, I've done a number of online training courses that I wouldn't have done otherwise. Sporting equipment, try and buy a bicycle at the moment. They came back into stores like Kmart and Big W and so on for a little while. I noticed they had stocks recently, but I'll bet if you haven't got one now and you want to get one for the kids before Christmas, they'll be running out again very soon, that's for sure. And not just bicycles, but all the things that go with it. Everyone's got to have a helmet and a pump and the bell and the lights and all that sort of stuff. Parcel deliveries through the roof, and we're seeing delays in that. My partner has been waiting a week for something that's going to be delivered by Australia Post, I think, but still waiting. And general delivery companies, they've done really well. They've employed extra staff. They're cranking up due to that. And video streaming, Netflix, all of those ones, of course, they have done well. The losers, the high-end dining. And the reason I put that in there is because those restaurants tend to rely on people being able to sit in more than just those groups of 8, and they've got higher overheads, of course, and a lot of the stuff they can't get, the stuff that they sell, some of the more exotic foods and that can't come in from overseas. The travel industry, of course, that's just been smashed, completely smashed. Hospitality and accommodation, there are some great deals at the moment if you're looking for a weekend away in the CBD of Sydney at the moment, because they've got vacancies all over the place. And also in some areas, some regional areas, now that we're allowed to travel as well, they're booked out, which is fantastic. But hospitality and the accommodation industry is really hit as well. Creative and performing arts, we can get all political and talk about where government support should be going, but that's really been one that's crippled again, because you can't go to a live theatre performance and so on. Tertiary education, as I mentioned, has been hit. Media companies, particularly those with a large print-centric focus, they've been hit, as we said. The events industry just closed up overnight, including sporting events. It's great now that we're able to have I think it was like 40,000 people at the grand finals at the weekend, but they're events that would attract 80. The record at the MCG is over 100,000 for people. So they've certainly been hit as well. And the rental property market has taken a hit. Where I live, I'm in Carlton near Hurstville, and there are 4 lease signs everywhere through Hurstville in those higher rise buildings. And that's because the university students have all packed up and gone home. So the rental property market has taken a hit. And as we know, it's a great time there to renegotiate your lease, of course. So let's talk about business to business in a little bit more specific terms. What's really changed for the business to business community here? I'm grateful, and he's joined our session I saw a little bit earlier. I'm grateful to my friend Michael Haynes, who is the business to business guru that I certainly turn to. And I've taken this graph from one of his recent presentations. This was a survey done just recently. You can see the colours there between 2020 buyers and 2018 buyers. So these are buyers. If you are in the B2B space, these are people who are going to buy your services. So what are the 5 top challenges? And the one that I found most interesting is this one: strategy and planning issues. There is a change of 44% as a challenge for people in those sort of spaces. In other words, people are having difficulty planning what's going to be happening for the future. Keeping and finding good people, there's been an increase there. What's going to happen, and it's already started to happen, and I can point to the hospitality industry with first-hand knowledge, is that casuals are just gone now. So when business, and you're going to see this really see it in Melbourne, watching the news last night about restaurants can open again now. And there was one restaurant owner quoted as saying, look, it's great we can open, but I can't get enough stock in and I've got no staff. The staff have all moved as well. And that's a cafe in a street. You're finding it in other areas as well. People have had to leave the business because they couldn't be paid. Getting those people back again is almost impossible, and replacing them is very difficult. So there's been a lot of pressures and a lot of change, and the top challenges are still there, but they've really increased. So what's happening out there? What should you be doing to find out? And that radar screen, it's a terrible little graphic, but it's really true. You should be out there. You should be listening to your customers. You should be listening to your colleagues. If you're in a sales role and you're in the business to business space, talk to your colleagues about what their customers are feeling, not just in the sales meeting. Go off and have a coffee and have a chat about this. Look at industry insiders. Look at what people are writing about, what bloggers are writing about. I've mentioned Michael Haynes earlier. If you're in that sort of space, you should be following people like him on LinkedIn. What are the industry bodies talking about? What are their newsletters talking about? If you're in certain industries, there are industry bodies that have websites. I have one for the Australian HR Institute, for example, and they give me a daily newsletter with information about what's going on in the HR space. So do your own online research, but go right back to that first dot point. Listen to your customers. And that means using these and not using that. Sit there and shut up and ask questions, guys, and ask what's going on, what's happening in their business. Their pain points will have moved. If you think of it like someone with their body, they had a sore shoulder, now they've got a sore lower back. But the shoulder's still a problem, but the lower back hurts more. Okay, so listen to people, have conversations, and use these and not this. Your customer rankings. I think most businesses, unless even those don't necessarily have it in a formal sense, tend to rank their customers, the A customers, you know, that bit about 80% of your business comes from 20% of your customers, numbers to that effect. So who were your A, B, and C customers prior to the COVID pandemic? You should know who they are. You should have it listed. Some people do it more formally than others, but where do they rank now? Importantly, some of them will literally have gone. If one of your customers was in the travel industry, one of my contacts in the Philippines is a BPO over there, an offshoring business. They are very fortunate. They've got a good spread of customers. Their eggs are in many baskets, and they've lost some customers, but they're okay. They've got it spread out. One of his competitors had a customer who was providing 80% of their income, was a wholesale travel business based in the USA, and they literally disappeared overnight. They are gone. So where are your customers now? How do they rank now? Because some of them won't be there. So sit down and review your rankings and the priorities for your particular customers. And it should be a team process. And don't forget the people that we refer to as influencers in your business. They're generally the people who are the end users of the products or the services that you're providing. So talk to those influencers in your business about your customers as well. It's all very well saying we're going to make this guy an A customer and we're going to give him this special treatment now if that guy requires deliveries in a time frame that you can't manage, for example. So make sure you involve all of the people in your business there. But now's the time, if you haven't already done it, to review those rankings. How fast can you move? Again, with this radar, how fast can you move regarding cash flow? Tony spoke about this and gave some tips about managing that last week for us, and that video is available on the YouTube channel for the Business Chamber. How fast can your supply channels move? Go back to that guy I spoke about, the restaurant in Melbourne, ready to open his doors, can't get stock. So if you now have to move, if you're ready to pick up some new customers, can your suppliers provide you the products that you need in order to satisfy those contracts that you're hoping to pick up? And from your end as well, can you deliver it? Have you got the logistics support? If you do pick up new clients or you do shift a client from an A client or a B client to an A client and so on. And are you prepared just in case there's going to be a phase 2? It sounded like New South Wales was treading very, 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 very closely to falling off and heading into phase 2 as Victoria did, but just managed to hold on by fingertips not to get there. But have you got a contingency plan if there is a phase 2? It's only a matter of a cluster breaking out, and next thing you know, we could, hopefully not, but we could well be back in lockdown. So what are you doing in your business to plan and think about all of those things as well? What's going to happen to your ability to deliver your product to your customers? What's going to happen to the supply chains that you need to come in to deliver to those customers? It'll be great to get new contracts for your business from a large customer or from a local council or a government contract or some sort, but are you going to be able to maintain that if we slip into a phase 2? So 3 skills for B2B people that I recommend, and there are plenty out there, but I recommend these 3 are really important. You need to gain these skills if you don't have them already. You need to update and refresh those skills if you've got them, or you just need to work on them and get better at doing them. And the one that I love the most, and it affects so many people in so many different ways, is disc profiling. And I'm sorry if anyone groaned when I put that up there, but it is something like disc profiling, or disc profiling itself is really, really important at any time. It's particularly important now if you're going to go out and try to acquire new customers or to work with the customers you've got who are going through either the same level of problems you are or even greater problems. So that's probably a skill you need to gain or to update, folks. And just a bit of a reminder for anyone who's familiar with disc profiling, if you're talking to a D person, these are the dictators, these are the autocrats in the world. They don't want you to stuff around. They don't want you to come in and tell this wonderful sales spiel. They just want you to get in, get to the bottom line. We can fix this problem for you. But you would have had to have sat there and listened and heard about the problem and made sure that you can deliver for that problem. So if you've got a high D customer, remember, get in there, be brief, speak up, focus narrowly, don't make generalizations, okay? And for goodness sake, don't repeat yourself and focus on the solutions rather than the problems. If you've got the I people, they're my favorites because I'm certainly one of those. Yep, have a chat with them, share your experiences, give them anecdotes, allow them time to ask questions and to talk about themselves. Oh, well, back when I was doing this, you know, they'll go along with that. Focus on the positives. Don't overload them too much with details. The joke about people who are I people is when they learn or tell you how to play the flute, they say you blow over this hole and you move your fingers up and down there and the music comes out. That's the way they think. So, and don't interrupt them. Let them tell their stories. Let them speak. If you've got an S person, be really friendly. These are the loyal people. You know, these are the followers. Okay, so be polite, take time to give them a bit of clarification, make sure that they think that you really are, or they know that you really are interested in them. And what do you expect from them as well? You know, we can provide you with this solution, but you've got to be able to do this. Okay, don't be too confrontational or aggressive. Be nice with an S person. Communicating with a C person, these are the accountants and these are the number crunchers and these are the people that the D people rely on to give them the information. They're going to trust these people in their organisation. So focus on facts, minimise all the emotional stuff, be patient, be persistent, be diplomatic. So now's the time again, as I said, sit down, look through those customers, the A's, the B's and the C's, and then look at the people you're dealing with, okay? And have a look to see where they fit on this DISC profile, because that's going to have an impact on the sorts of conversations that you're having. My screen hasn't clicked. There we go. So the next skill, active listening. I'll go back and say it again. You've got two of these and one of these. The days of going into a meeting with a potential client and sitting down and instantly pouring out the history of your company and telling them how you can be the greatest thing since sliced bread to this business without having heard what their problem is or confirming what you believe their problem to be, okay, gone. You need to get in there, you need to sit down, shut up, ask questions and listen, right? And if you are not good at listening, this is one of those skills you need to either gain or just plain work on, folks. So take notes. This is active listening 101. Take notes, ask questions. Don't be the extrovert from hell. If that's you, shut up, right? Ask the question and shut up, okay? And avoid getting into fix-it mode. If you're in there because they've been a customer and they're looking to leave, or they're a customer who only do a little bit of business with you and you want them to do a lot more business with you, often the reason they're not doing that is because they feel a problem with the relationship. So don't be bouncy in there saying, whatever we've done in the past, we're going to fix, guys. We're going to be different now. Let them vet. Let them give you a bit of a blast if that's the case. And it might not be about you. It might be about your industry generally. If I've worked in the advertising sales industry and it only needs one rogue newspaper proprietor or publisher or salesperson to give the whole industry a bad name. In the recruiting industry, I used to hear horror stories from the way candidates were treated by recruiters. So people are going to have a bent against a particular industry for no valid reason, but it's valid to them, and that's what's important. So don't be blasting in there saying, I can fix all the problems you've got. Give them space, let them vent, and then ask questions, okay? Virtual listening. This is what we're doing today. Every one of you is virtually listening to me because we're not face-to-face. If you're on a Zoom call with somebody, silence is not golden because you might well have your camera off. It could be a phone call, by the way, not necessarily a Zoom call, but silence is, how often have you been having a conversation with someone where you've done a lot of talking and there's been nothing on the other end for a minute or two and you go, are you still there? Okay, so you just need just a little bit of feedback, just, okay, yep. Okay. If you're doing this via Zoom, nod your head. Let them see, because that suggests I am listening, I am understanding. Blink your eyes every so often. Look at the person on the screen. Don't be doing this over here while they're talking, because they know damn well you're not paying attention to them. If you're looking over here, you might have a second screen with something on it. An email just popped in. Right? You've ever been in a meeting in a boardroom or a meeting room and someone's phone goes ding while you're talking and they sit down and do this? You can all see me looking at my phone, right? I might not remember that, but you can all see me. So they can see you. So active listening just needs a bit more effort in a virtual environment. You need to demonstrate that you are listening because you're not sitting in front of them face to face. They can't see your body language as easily as they could before. And the final one is your website or your LinkedIn profile. If your website isn't functional, if it takes too long to load, potential customers will go away. So let's work on a hypothetical meeting now. You go in, you've got a meeting now with the relevant decision maker in a particular business. You want to win them as a business. You have the meeting, you've got your list of all the information you need to go away and put a proposal together. When you go, the guy has a look at your website, if he hasn't looked at it already. If it takes more than just a few seconds to load, I forget the number, but it's something ridiculous like 7 seconds or something. And if it doesn't load easily on one of these, because they might well look at it on their phone, it's going to be a problem. They're going to think, these people are hopeless. Okay, so make sure your website is up to date, that it functions properly, that it's got the right information. The worst thing you can do is have someone on your website under the About Us bit and list your staff members or your management team and have people on there who are no longer a part of the company. and your LinkedIn profile. I had a meeting yesterday with a networking contact who's new in the business, and he's got a similar sort of business development sales background to me. So we think alike, and our LinkedIn profiles are up to date and I think pretty good what we do. He was going back to his office after the meeting because we had a discussion around this, and he's out there trying to win contracts. It's in the security industry. And he was telling me how good the two directors are to work for, how they're well experienced in the industry, they're ethical, they're honest, they would be great people to work for and a great company to employ. And you wouldn't have all those problems you saw in Melbourne if you'd employed his company to do that. And he believed it, and it was genuine, it was all great. But neither of the directors have a decent LinkedIn profile. Neither of them have their photos on the LinkedIn profile. So the guy finishes a meeting, I can see it coming, with a potential client, and he's gone out the door. Someone clicks on his LinkedIn profile, clicks on the business, and it says, see 5 other people who work here, and up comes a person with the title director. There's not even a photo on the LinkedIn profile, and there's hardly any information, and he's got 12 connections. Okay, so particularly in the business-to-business space, your LinkedIn profile is important, and your company website. Make sure it's up to date, make sure it works properly. If you haven't got contacts for any of these sorts of things, if you need someone who can train you in the basics or a more advanced course in disc profiling, that's not me, but I can help you with that. Active listing, I can certainly help you with. Your website, your LinkedIn profile, again, there are experts out there I can put you in touch with who can do that if you don't have someone in your circle. So we're going to take a short break now. Tanya, if you're still there, I'll let you take over for a sec.
Yep, not a problem. I'll just share my screen. So basically we're going to have a quick 2-minute break. So if you want to go stretch your legs, everybody, as well as just grab a cup of tea or coffee before we move on to the next section. Or if you've got any questions you'd like to ask Trevor about the B2B, please, if you've got your microphone on mute, unmute, or if you'd like to type it up into the chat box, that would be great. Any questions for him? Well, I've got 2 takes out of that. Basically, what I got out of that for the B2B is you're reconnecting. So you're reconnecting with your industry or your customer, and also building that relationship. So I think that's very important. And that even, I think, covers any sort of working relationship you have with anybody. What do you think?
Very important, Tanya. And as I said, don't forget that a lot of your customers are just simply not there now. And I'm not telling them, and you all know which of your customers have gone, but you've got to look at have they gone because their industry has gone? But the event industry is a great example, or have they gone because their business was particularly affected for other reasons? And can you replace that, or should you now be looking to work in a completely different industry sector with your products or services?
And those relationships, I mean, sometimes they can become strained when, you know, businesses go through such a tough time. How do you recommend that you go back and reconnect so that way you can start to rebuild that sort of relationship?
Okay, so grab yourself a dictionary, everyone, and look up these 2 words. Look up empathy and sympathy. Okay, you need to show empathy. Yes, I understand. Sympathy talks about the difference between the 2. Empathy is, wow, that must have been really terrible for you. I can understand that must have made you feel terrible. I can't imagine what it must be like to be in that situation. That's empathy. Sympathy is, oh, you poor thing. Yes, actually, I lost my father just last year as well. Yeah. Okay. Empathy is what you need to show with your customers. If they're doing it tough, you need to listen to them, and you need to let them know that you care and that you feel for them.
And what about new customers? If you're trying to build relationships after such a turbulent time with new potential B2Bs,
same again. Start with that empathetic approach, because they'll have done it tough. Look, I know we hear about businesses that have done well, but really there's very few businesses. The majority of them have done pretty badly as well. I once had, again, I've had I've had a record of changing jobs. We've only had 1 actual recession since 1991. So if anybody out there has been in business for 30 years or less, they haven't actually been through a recession. Now, you could argue that there's a definition of a recession around per capita GDP, and yes, we've had some dives that have technically been recessions that way. But even during the global financial crisis in 2008, Australia avoided a recession. So for a lot of businesses out there who you are looking to have as new customers, a lot of them have just never ever been in this sort of economic situation at all. And I was saying, I've actually had a habit or whatever, like, of changing jobs just as one of these downturns hit. And I can remember walking in to a potential new client one day to talk about advertising in the local newspaper I was working for, and she held up her power bill and said, "I can't even pay that. How do you expect me to advertise in your newspaper?" Okay. And the first thing I needed to do, which I didn't do because I was young, green, and not very smart, the first thing I did was, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," and walked out of the shop. What I should have said was, "Wow, that's terrible. What are you doing? Do you need some help with that? Are there people I can find to put you in contact? How are you having conversations with your suppliers?" All of that. Talk through it and show some empathy.
Reassuring them is reassuring. So maybe is there someone who's listening who wants to share one of their B2B experiences of recent times? If they have, can you unmute your microphone? Yep.
Yeah, Tanya, it's Tony Vidal. How are you?
Hello, Tony Vidal from Elite Finance.
Hi, how are you? Look, great presentation, Trev. Can I just say, your comments about listening, so poignant, so spot on. I don't want to go into too much sort of detail this time, but that's what especially during this pandemic, and especially with dealing with obviously people's personal finances, it's so important. People sometimes, you are right, they don't want you to fix the problem. They don't want to vent sometimes. So to be a good listener, I agree with you 100%. That's probably one of the most important things. And like you said, don't be a Mr. Fix-It. Just listen and be empathetic and try to help, offer some sort of thing, but don't try to be Mr. Fix-It, because sometimes that's not what they want. You know, your comments are 100% correct there. So, and that goes to everybody. Doesn't matter what industry you're in. Listen to your client first. That's 100% important.
It's so true. So what we might do is, if everybody's ready to go, we'll get back into session 2, which focuses on the B2C. So over to you, Trevor.
Good. And can we just say, before we do take a quick break, the webinar was scheduled to finish at 10 o'clock. We deliberately put that in there in case we did lots of questions, because you've got to book the time on Zoom. I can assure you we're going to be done by around 9:30, everyone, if not earlier. So if you're thinking that I'll have to bail out because I won't be able to stay for the rest of this, please stay around. You'll be fine.
Yep. So you can kick off, actually. Go for round 2.
So business to consumer now. And again, this is a slightly different focus. This is essentially anyone who's dealing with the public generally rather than with another business. And it's important too, some businesses do both. Tony is a great example. He does personal finance for people. I do my tax return, or his company do my tax return, but also would have business clients as well, of course. So first one, where did my customers go? What happened to them? Where have they all disappeared to? Could be any number of things. Jobs lost, both immediately and gradual. And we are talking here about businesses where they literally closed down, as I said, overnight. Melbourne CBD more than Sydney, but Sydney CBD as well, have been described as ghost towns at the moment, because businesses have just closed up. People aren't coming in to work. They're working from home, of course. But jobs have just disappeared. People have been made redundant, or jobs have been made redundant. People have had to be let go. And it happened right at the start, but it's also happened. The second stage of JobKeeper 2.0, that kicked in at the end of last month, and the next stage that will kick in at the end of December. One of the things that people are saying about what's going to happen when those JobKeeper stages happen is that zombie businesses will disappear, and they're businesses that were just propped up with JobKeeper along the way. So they're gone because jobs have got lost. Your customers now can't afford to come and buy the stuff from you because they've lost their job. Businesses have closed down as part of all of that. They've just disappeared. Again, I talk about the event industry, but some businesses in the travel sector have completely gone. Just recently, Flight Centre closed another group of stores that had stayed open up until now, but shop fronts have gone for businesses like that as well. People have moved away. They've taken this opportunity now. They've lost their job, or they've moved to country areas, or, as I said about the apartment rentals available in Hurstville, there's a whole lot of people have gone back overseas. Overseas students have just left the country, basically, as soon as they could to go back home. And as I said, people have returned home, especially overseas, and people are very cautious. A lot of people, particularly older people, are really cautious about going into shops. Even though they think it's safe and there's no actual restrictions, they're still a little bit worried. And I've seen it. I've seen some people actually stand at the door of cafes because there's been 4 people in there. You're allowed to have 5 or 6 people, but they've stood at the door and called their order out. So people have moved to buying online, and they aren't necessarily buying from you online. They're buying online because they can. So they're buying through companies like Amazon and those sort of ones as well, instead of coming to your shop. But some businesses have picked up new customers. And there's no better example than the cafes here near my place in Carlton. There are 3 cafes in a very small little shopping strip, and all of them seem to be doing quite well at the moment. And one reason all 3 of them tell me they're doing quite well at the moment is because they're getting customers who they normally don't see. They would walk past, maybe buy a coffee on the way to the train station to go into the city, and it's in the city where they buy their breakfast or their lunch or whatever it might be. And by the time they come home at night, the cafes have already closed. So they're getting those sort of businesses. I was in a cafe the other day in another part of Carlton, up towards Bexley. It's on a little corner cafe. And while I was there, a person came in and said, "I can't believe this. I live just around the corner. I didn't even know you were here, because when I drive my car out, I go that way. I never come past here in daytime hours." So people are working from home, and therefore they are shopping near home. We're more loyal to a closed business. You're now providing a service, whatever, because that other business couldn't survive, unfortunately. People have moved into your area. Those people who are moving because they've had to leave a lease that they couldn't afford, or that they've found another place to live that's cheaper, or their job has changed or something. Now got people in your area you didn't have. Buy local, as I said, the Chamber have been promoting buy local for close to a year now, but everyone's jumped on the bandwagon, and I mean that not disrespectfully. That's a very, very positive thing. And the more people talking buy local, shop local, the better, as far as I'm concerned. So buy local has encouraged people to come and buy from you instead of buying from a bigger chain store, or buying online even, or buying elsewhere. You changed. Very important aspect. You pivoted your business. There's that word again, but you changed your business, and now you're offering maybe online sales that you didn't have before, or you're offering something else that's new. And those microbreweries making hand sanitizers are a good example. There's a very good chance, I would think, that if you're now buying hand sanitizers from a microbrewery, or from someone like Carlos, for example, you might try the other products as well, because you've now been acquired as a customer, and there's an opportunity to connect with that customer. And through networking and word of mouth, people now are more likely to listen to, and this is only anecdotal evidence, by the way, folks, there's no research I know of, but people now are more likely to listen to, "Oh, you need a plumber? I know someone." Okay, they're going to trust that a little bit more, because they're feeling a bit insecure at the moment in this pandemic stage. So if you've been out networking, and word of mouth is spreading about your business. And can I tell you, that's pretty much how I've launched this business in January. COVID hit, what am I going to do? I've done a lot more networking than I planned to do, I can assure you, both online and where I could face to face. So 3 skills in the B2C space for you to gain, update, or just plain work on. If you don't do networking, don't do networking. If you feel you're bad at it, if you're uncomfortable in those sort of situations, and people can be introverts without actually realizing it. If you're in those situations, then you really need to work on your networking skills. There are a myriad of opportunities to join networking events for no cost, because you're not paying a fee for any food, drink, coffee, and so on now to go to a venue. You can join any number of networking events online. Again, if you'd like some assistance to find those, give me a yell. The ones I'm connected to, I can put you in touch with, or I can assist you to find others. And a lot of them have sprung up because of Zoom can happen. There's some local area marketing groups sprung up out in the western suburbs. So there's plenty of opportunities, and frankly, there's no excuse. Was that someone there? Oh. Next skill, asking questions. It's as relevant for the business to consumer space as it is for the business to business space. You need to know about your customers and what their needs are. So it's as simple as when a customer comes into your shop and changes their order, or you can tell that they're looking around, ask them, can you help? What are they looking for? If you're selling widgets and they want a widget, well, hey, look, that's okay. We can get that in for you, you know, we can get those things for you. But ask questions about your customers. If they're new faces, talk to them, ask them about them. They'll soon clam up if they don't feel like talking to you, but they will generally want to tell you about them. They'll be grateful that you showed some interest. So ask questions of your customers when they come into your shop. If you've got a customer you haven't seen in your shop for a while, but you have seen them in the street, have a social chat with them and say, oh, I've noticed you haven't been around for a while. What's going on? They may well open up to something that you could have fixed. Well, I didn't realize you were open, or you weren't open at the hours I used to be. Can I tell you an interesting segue there as well, in terms of asking questions? One of those cafes in Carlton I spoke about, back when you couldn't have customers sitting in the business, they could only do takeaways, that was going to end in a week or so. And I was chatting to the guy there and said, so I'll bet you'll be glad to have customers back sitting and everything. And he went, you know what? If this has to carry on, it's not such a bad thing. And I was astounded that that was the way he was thinking. And he said, well, I don't need any staff because the wife and I can run the business now. I don't have to move all these chairs and tables outside onto the street every day and bring them back in again every day. And he's got a bung leg, by the way, so that probably wasn't helping. And he said, I don't have to worry about having kitchen staff because we're not cooking meals. We're just doing the basics. We've got, you know, toasted sandwiches, things like that, and cups of coffee. And he said, and our margin is not much different to what it is when we're open and have got people sitting down and so on. And we don't get the people who come in and buy a coffee and sit for an hour and do their work on their computer. So ask questions about your customers, but also ask questions from other businesses as well and find how they're coping. And again, I mentioned this earlier as well, your website and your LinkedIn profile. Okay, now probably more so the LinkedIn and the B2C space, have a look at your Facebook profile. Okay, and if you're using Instagram and things like that. But now is the time to maybe look at social media, because people will look you up. They might enjoy the experience and want to go and give you a bit of a thank you and a good review. And if you haven't got a Facebook page for them to go and review you on, or they're not able to find you on Google, and they do, if you've got a website for your business, make sure it works. You don't necessarily have to have one for your business, but make sure that your website works, for goodness sake, and make sure it loads properly and it's got the information people need. So I'm going to go back over again this now in the B2C space quickly to finish up with disc profiling. And you might be thinking, well, I don't need that, all that psychological babble and all that sort of stuff. But this is now about knowing your customers, and that is vital. You need to know about your customers. You need to know where they live. You need to know about what sort of things they want. And it covers a whole lot of stuff. You don't necessarily have to know them personally. Don't mistake know your customers as in knowing them as people and such. But you need to know about where they live. Great example I just used before about that cafe. Here was someone who lived around the corner and didn't even know that she was there, okay, or didn't realize she was open. Okay, so you need to know your customers, and you need to know them before they become a customer. So when they come into your shop or they interact with your store in some way, how often do you get them as tie kickers who come in? I'll bet our president, Alan at Z&Z Jewelers, gets a lot of people who come into that shop and leave without actually buying something, just looking thank you, all that sort of stuff. So if they're D-level customers, right, if they're D people, give them the bottom line. Be brief, speak up, avoid generalizations. If they walk in, and you can generally judge from people like that, they're a bit short, a little bit sharp. And I don't think she'll mind me saying this, she's not on this, meeting at the moment, but I don't think she'll mind me using her example without naming her. My former boss in my previous employer is a D person. Her husband is one of those nice S sort of people, right? They walk into a restaurant together. He will walk up to the front of the counter and say, "Oh, hi, how are you? You have this, nice to see you," and have a little chat with the lady who's, ready, the maitre d', who's ready to sit them at their table. The lady, the wife, will be standing behind, gritting her teeth and saying, "Just tell them, table for 2, booked for 7:30. Just wants to get in there and sit down and start eating and get on with it. And you can identify those people. So if you get someone you can identify like that. Same with the I customers, the people who love to have a chat. They'll ask you lots of questions. Let them ask that questions. And by all means, share your experiences with them. Oh, yes, I know exactly what you mean. I had one of those as well. Oh, I was thinking to buy that gold chain, but the last one I had broke. Yep, we've got a number of customers have that problem. That's probably because the clamp was poor quality. This is top quality. This clamp is, look here, I can show you, pick it up and you do this with it as well. So look out for those people. They're going to ask you lots of questions. The S customers, they're going to be nice. They're going to be a little bit shy, a little bit quiet. They're the ones when you walk up and say, hi, can I help you? They're probably going to go, no, I'm okay. I'll be fine, thank you. And if you're not careful, they'll run out the shop, okay? You will lose them, by the way, if you're grumpy. Don't have a bad day around these people. You just can't do it. So be friendly, take your time, be polite. If they just want to look, yeah, that's fine. Look, I'm just over there. If you need to give me a call, okay. And then check on them. If they're in your shop for a while and they're still looking around, wander back over again and say, hey, you're still all right now? Just checking, all right? Don't be too pressured, but recognize the fact that they're a little bit shy. They just need that bit of work. And finally, the C customers, they just want facts and details. Be patient with them. They'll ask you lots of questions, but it's more likely to be the technical sort of questions, okay? The I guy is going to come in and say, fantastic, this is great. Can I get it in blue? All right. The C customer is going to come in and say, so will this have this many megabytes and will this do this for me? And can you run this program? All that sort of stuff. So just be aware of those different customer styles, because the last thing you want to do now is lose a potential customer. Okay, it's all very well. So get to know them before they're actually a customer. They're not a customer, they're a visitor to your business until they actually spend money with you. Then they become a customer. Okay. And that, folks, I think pretty much sums up everything I wanted to cover for you today. I'm more than happy to take some questions now. And hopefully I've been able to give you some insights and some assistance there.
Yeah, I think that was great. The other thing too, Trevor, especially with people going onto the online space, is you ensure that you make that similar connection online. So it's important to have a digital presence, including Google. I think you said, I think 80% of people now search online for what they need, especially if we're not allowed to go out. So do encourage reviews, because that people do look at that as well, because that's an endorsement. That's your word of mouth that's happening on a digital space, and people do look at that.
And I know I banged on a little bit about your websites, but I was astounded to see the statistics about how impatient people are these days. If your website takes more than just a few seconds to load, they're gone. They're looking for something else. And I'll give a great example. And like a lot of people, when you go into a cafe or a pub or something like that, and there's any number of those QR code scanners, believe me, the experience, I feel good when I use one that loads up my information. It remembers me, it loads you up quickly, and it's all there. You just have to hit the enter button and show the person that you've registered. If you've got one that takes forever to load, that sort of stuff, anything technical that takes a while, people have very high expectations nowadays.
And can we talk about, because obviously part of that relationship is also appeasing angry customers. And again, if we go back to that digital space, if you get a bad review online and how you manage that, because that's also important in terms of how you reflect your reputation. Do you want to touch on how you manage an online bad review?
The worst you can do is ignore it. And the second worst thing you can do is to delete it if you've got that facility available to you. People are going to be very suspicious. If everybody's got nothing but 5s and the occasional 4 on there, okay, they're going to think that there's something wrong, because no one's that good. So interact with the person straight away. If you know who they are and you can contact them directly, even better, but certainly reply right away and begin with something and showing empathy. I'm sorry that the quality was not there that you expected, or words to that effect as well.
Would you encourage taking that offline? So take that. So we say, thanks for call. We're sorry you've heard that. Would you mind contacting us directly to get some more information? Perfect.
Definitely have that in there. But can I say as well, there are limits. And I'm going to swear, I apologise, everyone. There are arseholes out there, folks. Okay. There are people who are just bad people. Do not, under any circumstances, accept inaccurate criticism of your staff in particular, because your staff will read these reviews as well. If a bad customer came in and gave your staff a hard time, then you should have been able to stop that on the spot. Of course, hopefully you were there to do it. But if that bad customer puts up a review, then go back in there and have a blue with them, seriously. It might not work for everyone and for every customer, but get in there, okay, and say, no, you are wrong, sir. I was there on the day you came in and we had this conversation in our shop. That was not the story, and you know it very well, etc. But don't stand up for your staff. I've actually seen a hotel general manager do that, and I wrote an email myself. I hadn't stayed at this hotel yet. I booked some rooms there months in advance, and I actually wrote an email to the hotel's general contact details and said, I was already looking forward to staying here, but I just read how your manager stood up for your staff. And he was polite, but he was firm and said, no, our staff might be students, but they are all properly trained and they work very, very hard at their jobs. And I'm sorry, but that criticism you have made is unfounded and not rational. So there are limits. Just the same as before we had Google and everything else like that. If you've got an angry client on the phone yelling and swearing at that lady in the office and she's in tears, grab that phone off him and give that person a blast and tell them that's unacceptable behaviour. Okay? So there are limits.
Yep. Do I have any questions coming from the floor?
Yeah, I've got a question.
Go for it, Carlos.
Hi, Trevor. How are you? Thank you very much for the presentation. It was awesome. How do we train? It's pretty much a two-part question. How do we find the right staff that's able to identify and have the intelligence to identify the various types of customers that come into your retail outlet or your business or your, whatever it may be? And what are some of the questions that you ask during the interview process when you are sort of looking for these particular intelligent people that are able to identify sort of the S's and the S-type people and etc. How do we find the right person for the job without having to have a high churn of staff?
Yep. Great question. And I wish everybody thought about that, Carlos, when they recruit people, because there's a tendency to look at a CV and go, oh, that person's got the degree and that person's only got a diploma or that person's only got a Cert 4. When seriously, the Cert 4 qualification and skills that you obtain in a Cert 4 are more than adequate for the role that you're recruiting for. Okay, so recruit on attitude. So number one, you have to recruit for someone, they may not have that particular skill, but they are certainly shown by their attitude that they'll be willing to learn. And seriously, a disc profiling, if you choose to do that, a disc profiling 101 training session takes somewhere between an hour and 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours if they do a little bit of workbook sort of stuff. So it's not expensive to train those people, but you're looking for attitude as much as anything else. And you can ask questions during the interview. And the best questions are those, give me an example of when. Give them a hypothetical problem with a customer. How would you deal that? Have you ever had to deal with a customer like that? The bit Tanya raised about, have you ever in your business had to respond to a bad Google review and how did you do it? And I'll tell you now, I know I banged on about it just a few minutes ago, but if that particular person said, well, as a matter of fact, I thought they were a bit over the top because I was there and I witnessed it and the customer was actually at fault, and I alluded to that in my response, I'm not necessarily going to give that person a strike. I think I'm going to be more interested in that. But yeah, asking questions in an interview and open-ended questions, and give them an opportunity to talk about a time when they dealt with a particular issue, or ask them on the spot, how would you deal with a particular issue as well?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Trevor. Thanks very much, Tanya. Great job, guys.
Thank you. That's okay. Now, I do want to share a story, because there was a bagel shop in New York that had a very bad customer review. They said, the customer went in and posted on Google, this is the worst bagel I've ever tasted. And what that business did, which I thought was genius, then they said, we dare you to come and tell us if these are the worst bagels. And it actually, they turned a negative into a positive and made it into this brilliant marketing campaign, and basically became extremely busy. So they pretty much called it on a dare, and I thought that was brilliant.
Yep. Yeah.
Is there any other questions that we've got, or I can start I'll look at wrapping up? Do we have any other questions? No? All right.
How do you prevent sort of, like, is there a sort of is there an app out there or a system or something in place that you can sort of block out, like, kind of, troll style reviews and things like that, or you just got to tackle them
On
there and
Google, I don't know enough about Google to know, Carlos. My gut feeling tells me that there's not, because I do see people make just ridiculous reviews.
Yeah.
As I said, the ones though that stick in my mind are the ones where people have clearly they're trolls. They've just typed that the grammar, the spelling is incorrect. There's not a capital letter anywhere. There's barely a full stop. You can tell they're just idiots and they're trolls, or they're trolls, but they're still there. So if people were monitoring that, they would have done something about it. They would have found a way to delete that clearly disingenuous comment or stupid comment, or they would have responded to it in some way as well. So not responding is probably one of the worst things you can do.
But I also think you do build very strong customer relationships, and you'll find online, if you've got a really nice, strong following, they will defend you. You've got those employees who pay for you, and they're your raving fans, and they're the ones that will come out and support you always. So
I've had it firsthand, well, secondhand, I guess. Example is my partner, many of you know, works in the hospitality sector, takes a lot of pride in what he does for work, and the company takes a lot of pride in the reviews they get through TripAdvisor along the way. And there was a comment made recently, it was a few months ago, about a particular staff member, not my partner, but a particular staff member, because they wear name badges, and this person did this on this day. And the boss wrote back, thought about it, wrote back and said, look, it'd be really good if you can make contact. We'd like to sort this because that person is on annual leave at the moment. It hasn't worked for 2 weeks. So clearly it was a troll of some sort, and it could have been someone who didn't like that particular person and thought, I know where they work, I'll go in and make life difficult for them. So yes, always respond, always.
So Trevor, before we wrap up, just if you want to touch on your top 3 key points so people can take out from today, what are the top 3 points from today?
In the common themes between business to business and business to consumer. Shut up and listen. Use these, don't use these. Recognize the difference between empathy and sympathy, as I said earlier as well. Empathy is listening to the person and letting them know that you care and that you do from there. Number 2, I can't emphasize enough, if you've got a website for your business, for goodness sake, make sure it works, make sure it's up to date. You've spent money on it. Even if you've done it through a GoDaddy or one of those at a budget price, you've still spent money on it. And it is the shop front. It is the front door of your business, or the front window of your business. People who aren't actually at your business. So make sure it works, make sure it's up to date, and make sure it works as well. And the other one is, it comes back, knowing your customers before they become customers. Okay, so if you've got, just pay a bit of attention. You don't need to go out and do a disc profiling course necessarily. Just take those points I left on those slides if you want, but just make a little bit of an effort to try and work out a little bit about the way that customer comes in. No one, I'm sure, no one in their right mind thinks that everybody is the same, that everyone's personality is the same. And yet there's a tendency, particularly in the training that some salespeople get, there is a tendency to treat everybody the same. So greet everybody the same, and then deal with them in the same way, and have a script to work from, you know, if they don't want to buy. Go back to the bad old days when people used to be scared to go into car yards because they were going to be, you know, sold to, and they were going to be, no one was going to leave here until you make a deal, okay? Forget all that now. Just take a little bit of a time, particularly in the business to consumer space. If someone comes into your business or into your shop, or even if they're on the phone, talking to you, making an inquiry, just listen really carefully and try and work out what sort of person they are and tailor your response to suit that person.
So you're making them feel valued.
Absolutely.
All right. So what I will do is I'll just want to say thank you, Trevor. Trevor Weeding's from Development Pathways. I just wanted to say thank you. I hope you've all enjoyed today's webinar. It's on the new normal for business 2020. And thanks to Carlos for asking the questions, and for the input also given by Tony from Elite Finance. So I also wanted to take this opportunity to invite all businesses in the Georges River LGA to register on our networking platform, georgesriverbusiness.com.au. And there's also a quick reminder, the St. George Business Chamber. If you're not a member, I would strongly suggest that you join. Membership is currently free. So you visit St. George, that's stgeorgebc.org. Take advantage, guys, because they're doing regular webinars and seminars, so it's all beneficial to you. And also in the next 24 hours, you will be receiving an email with the link to a quick survey, and I would encourage you to spend a few minutes to give us your feedback. It helps us plan future events that matter to you. I mean, at the end of the day, we want to see small business thrive. So it's very important that you give that feedback into that survey. So, and on that note, please, I want to say thank you so much to everybody for attending the webinar. This wraps up our Small Business Month. I want to say thank you to New South Wales Treasury for their support. And on behalf of Georges River Council and the St George Business Chamber, we wish you and your business every business success. So go and have a great day, everybody. I hope you're kicking goals, and hopefully we'll see you next time. Bye.
Fantastic.